Booked and Brewed Book Club, the podcast where we enjoy our favorite brews and talk about our favorite books. I'm Alex.
I'm Amanda.
And I'm Melina, and we're so glad you're here today and you want to talk about books. So thanks for being here. And for this episode, we're going to talk about The Silent Patient.
Woohoo! We are so excited to get into a thriller, kind of change it up. I know we've talked about fantasy, dystopia. So it'll be fun to talk about something a little different today. But before we begin, what is everyone's book and brew for the day?
I'll start off. My brew today is unimaginative. It is water because I don't know where everyone's located, but I'm in the Northeast and it is a fierce heat wave right now. So, chugging as much water as I can. For my current book, I'm still reading Atmosphere from Taylor Jenkins Reid, but I did start because I can't only be reading one book. The Night and the Moth by Rachel Illig, which I'm very, very excited about on my Kindle.
Nice, very exciting. Melina?
Um, I'm drinking uh, Evie, which is a drink from Greece that
Ooh.
we brought back. And I'm currently reading Defy Me.
Oh, nice. What number is that in the Shattered Me series?
I think it's five.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
You
making some
really are in
progress
that.
there.
I just have to say, I've been seeing your TikTok blow up with these binding 13, like
I
all these
know.
things. And I'm like, okay, now I need to read. I feel so
Seriously.
influenced.
Seriously, I keep seeing stuff about like saving six and redeeming six, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and I have to read it, but it's gonna break me.
I've heard they're doozies, doozy
Yeah.
books. So good
Well,
luck.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I've kind of been on in a one-off kind of
Mhm.
situation lately. So my book for the week is The Housemaid by Frida
Hmm.
McFadden. I haven't read it. So many people are hyping it up. So I just figured, let me just read that. And then my brew. Okay, guys, I'm really changing it up. I'm drinking red wine because it's been that kind of week. So
Wow. Oh my
Nice.
gosh. Now I
I
feel like
know.
I change.
I really went for an adult beverage this time around. Oh, all right, fab. Well, now that we know that what everyone's book and brew is, we can definitely now just jump into The Silent Patient. So essentially, the main character, her name is Alicia Barrison. She's a painter who's married to a fashion photographer, Gabriel Barrison. And from the outside, they seem to have this like perfect life. And then one evening, Gabriel comes home late and Alicia shoots him 5 times in the face. And then, right after the murder, she refuses to speak a single word, thus becoming the silent patient, which the book is named after. She's then admitted to the Grove, which is a psychiatric facility. And her refusal to speak leaves the motive behind the murder unknown and fuels public fascination. So Theo Faber, a criminal psychotherapist, becomes obsessed with Alicia's case. He applies to work at the Grove with the specific goal of working with her and uncovering the truth behind Gabriel's murder. Theo begins therapy sessions with Alicia and starts investigating her past. He begins speaking to her friends, her colleagues, and family to piece together everything that happened from that night and to really understand her backstory, what kind of led her to do what she did. She starts to communicate through her art. So she begins painting a self portrait titled, and I'm apologize if I chop this up a little bit. It's Alcestis. Um, this is a Greek myth about a woman who sacrifices herself for her husband only to be betrayed and left to die, which is a symbolic key to Alicia's trauma. Throughout the book, Alicia's diary entries provide insight into her deteriorating mental state leading up to the murder, including feeling watched and paranoid about a man following her. Theo is also dealing with personal issues. Again, Theo is the psychotherapist who is analyzing her. So he starts to have issues. We kind of deep dive into his marriage to Kathy, and we start to notice that it's falling apart. he also suspects she's having an affair, which then becomes later confirmed. So throughout the whole book series, you get like one chapter of what's going on with Theo and Alicia, and then the next chapter will be a like flash into Theo's life. So it's kind of this back and forth thing. And you'll notice throughout the book, there's not really an overlap. So you'll never see Theo's personal life in the same chapter where he's talking with Alicia, and vice versa, which I think is a very key point to this whole story. As Theo digs deeper, he discovers that Alicia's brother-in-law, Max Barrison, has romantic feelings towards her, and that her father emotionally abused her, blaming her for her mother's death. So then, when Alicia is at home one day, this man ends up coming into her home. She sees a masked man in her house before Gabriel's murder, and it actually was Theo himself. This is the plot twist. So Theo discovered that Kathy was having an affair with Gabriel, who was Alicia's husband, and a rage and need for retribution. Theo broke into Alicia's home wearing a mask and tied up both Alicia and Gabriel at gunpoint. He told Gabriel he would shoot Alicia. Oh my gosh, I don't know why I keep butchering her name. Unless Gabriel volunteered to take her place. Gabriel ended up staying silent. That moment of betrayal by the man she loved really broke Alicia. So again, that kind of refers back to that painting that she made of Alcestis. Gabriel really didn't sacrifice, like she sacrificed herself for him essentially, and he was like, okay, I'll take it. Theo then left, expecting the trauma to speak for itself. He wasn't expecting her to kill her husband. He just wanted to unravel the truth behind what was going on. But Alicia ended up killing her husband, Gabriel, in a state of psychological collapse and complete emotional devastation. Again, we learned throughout the book, again, her trauma with her dad. So this kind of really triggered a moment from her childhood that kind of just let her snap, and hence why she ended up killing her husband. Alicia knew it was Theo who broke into her house. However, instead of speaking, she wrote the full truth in her diary. So after Theo gives Alicia what he thinks is a sedative, but is actually a lethal dose given by anyone else at the facility, she becomes comatose, but not before hiding the diary, where it's eventually found by the police. Alicia's diary entry is discovered by the police, exposing Theo as the masked man and implicating him in the chain of events that led to Gabriel's murder. The book ends with Theo's arrest as his narration turns into a confession. Dun, dun, dun. We decided we're going to split everything into segments now. So let's start with the first one. How would you guys rate this book?
Well, I'll start. This might be a bit of a twist. I would give it like a 3.75 out of a 5 for a thriller. I know, the shocked faces. I liked the plot. I liked the writing style, which we can get into in a bit. I just thought it was a bit predictable. Question mark, question mark. So I kind of guessed the ending a little bit, or like the twist. So while it was so fun reading it and getting to that point, I wasn't surprised by the whole Theo. I always thought her name was Alice, so Alicia too. The twist at the end, but I loved the journey to get there.
I put it at a 4 because I did not predict that at all. Yeah, I was just so shocked that these two storylines collided, and it kind of just like blew my mind. I was like, wait, how does this work? So yeah, I put it at a 4, and I probably would read it again. It was very entertaining. I did read it pretty fast. So
1 out of 5 if you liked it. It was Christy.
I'm very picky with what I put my 5 stars.
Totally fair.
Yeah. So I have to absolutely love a book to have it 5 stars. It's very rare that I put something at 5 stars.
Gotcha. Discerning. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I get that. I mean, you can't give every book a 5-star because
yeah,
I'll just slowly
there's no value behind it.
I'll slowly bleed off frame. I'm a star.
Wait, that is so surprising because I feel like you would be the most critical to give a 5 star to.
I go like one or the other. I like if I
Really?
like it, if I should say I give out more 5 stars than probably deserve, but I am a favorite of like a 3, 4 on the Goodreads scale, unless it's
Mm,
truly terrible, where it's like a 1, 2.
me too.
Um, but I'm generous with books that I like, whether they're well written or not, with fives. So, fun fact. What about you,
Fun
Alex?
fact. I'm sorry, I want to share how I read my books now. Fun fact, a 5 is like, this book changed my life. I would read it again and again. A 4 is I would read it again and I enjoyed it. And a 3 is I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't read it again. A 2 and a 1 is that was really horrible. Why did I read it?
I love that. I need to
Valid.
do that better.
Okay, anyways,
I like
Alex.
your scaling system on that. I gave this, hold on, I'm looking at my Fable. So yeah, for my Fable, I gave it a 4.5 stars. I really liked it. I think, okay, context. This was the first thriller I've read in a really long time.
Me
Mm.
too.
So I'm a little bit more biased. I haven't read a lot of thriller. I mean, now I have, but when I read it, I hadn't read a lot of thrillers around that time period. So I guess I kind of gave my 5.5 star, like just willy-nilly, But I really enjoyed it. I really wasn't expecting the end to end the way it did. I knew he was obsessed with her. I thought that was really weird, but I thought it was more so he was like in love with her, or it was for his
Yeah.
own, like personal gain. I didn't think it was because of what happened, like because of his wife having the affair. And I didn't pick up
Mhm.
that it was 2 different timelines
Me neither.
running like at the same time until the very end when it all came together. So
Uh-huh.
that was for me. But again, I'm also not like, keep in mind, I'm not like a crime show junkie. I'm not something. So if you are, you probably would have picked up on this way faster than I would have.
Yeah.
You
But
know?
it's still good. And I think we mentioned in an earlier episode, you both are Greek. So the Greek undertones, the Greek lore
Mhm.
here, I think
Oh, love.
is, yeah, like
Yeah.
I knew this would be good.
Yeah.
His next book, The Maidens, is even, I think, even deeper into that. You guys would love it too. But no, this was like a solid thriller, so I think
Mhm.
we're all in agreement there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was good. Like you said, solid. I would read it again,
Mhm.
but there's so many books on my TBR. I
Yeah.
will probably
I know. I need to mark time, how long it would take
Mhm.
me to come all the way back around to read it again. It's going to be years.
Right. 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 Melina, I think we should change your scale. Instead of it being like would read again, it should just be like would recommend, Like
Yeah.
I want someone else to read this for the first time and I can live vicariously through them
Yeah.
because I probably will
Right.
never read it again.
Right.
Yes.
Um,
But I'm so picky about what I recommend, and like I recommend
that's
different
good
things to
though.
different people.
Yeah.
Because some people I'm like, they're not gonna like that. They don't that's not what they like. So I don't recommend it even though I loved it.
That's true. That's true.
Let's move
Um,
on to favorite parts.
yes.
Yeah, I even though I guessed the big reveal, I still think it was grand in terms of book. Like I could really picture it happening when like I knew it was gonna happen. I knew that he was her stalker. I think I had ideas of it, but I didn't know how it was going to unfold particularly. So that's one of my favorite parts of a thriller is always like getting to kind of the punch and being like, okay, was I right or wrong? And then
Yeah.
going back and saying like, okay, now I'm picking up the pieces. But with this book in particular, I love, and not like a favorite part, but just a thing I liked about it that added to the rating is the way it was written. I'm not usually a big dueling kind of storyline person. I love a kind of dual POV, but I really dislike kind of split timelines. So, with that in mind, the fact that the author Alex kind of wove it together well enough where it didn't bother me, and it was really clever plotting, I think, to have it be separate and not realize until you're fairly, through the book that like, oh, this is something funky going on here, and it's kind of maybe happening in a different order than we thought. So I always think that portion, like when people are clever with a thriller because it's been done a billion times before, really adds to the positive experience.
Um, yeah, I guess I like to be the reveal because I wasn't guessing at it at all. So when he was like in the shed or something, um, and talking about that, I was like, wait, hang on.
Like backup.
And I kind of started to put it together. Um, that oh wait, he's like, why is he watching this person? Um,
Like in the wind.
yeah.
Yeah,
hmm Yeah, it's when they finally like reveal that twist that I that's always my favorite part of thrillers.
100%. I do the like the
hmm
back flip and like I reread. I'm like, wait, did I black
Yeah.
out? I go back and I
hmm
read the last page. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things I think about a thriller. Same with a really great TV show or movie, right? You can go and if you kind of know the story or you've read the book, but you're watching the show, you can pick up on, oh, okay, here, this is foreshadowing and I know why. I'm always tempted to go back and reread a thriller in a shorter span of time so I can kind of remember the plotting and then go back and pick up on the things. But I also struggle with, well, I if I like it enough to give it a 5 stars, would reread again to Melina's star rating. I also know the ending definitively. And so I always wonder if it's going to take away from my reading experience. But on the other hand, you pick up on more through a reread like that. So I agree with you.
Definitely. I feel like that's the best part about rereading a thriller is the ability to know how it's going to end and then you're cluing it together
hmm
from the beginning. And
100.
you're sitting there and you realize exactly what you miss. And I've I think that every time I reread a thriller now, I'm able to pick up on it faster. And I'm like, this is the moment. I should have known better, you
Right.
know?
Right. Well, it's a volume replay. It's kind of, when you watch a lot of TV shows like CSI, right, or Criminal Minds, it's you
Yeah.
pick up on the type of flow. Same with a thriller. If you read a lot of them, you kind of pick up on the cadence or the structure and certain words you're like, okay, this is gonna same with fantasy novels, right?
hmm
Oh,
It's always a good
definitely.
foreshadow in fantasy, so
Yeah.
they overlap.
Ugh, I know. That's why I can't wait for my big like Throne of Glass reread.
Me too.
It's gonna be such an epic experience, but it'll be
hmm
so worth it to
Yeah.
relive all of that again.
Yeah.
What was everyone's least favorite part?
Okay, I really didn't care for any of the storyline about the painting. I just
Really?
thought
Why
that
was
was
that?
so boring. I don't know, but I just thought it was so boring. I was like, I really do not care. Like, I know this is symbolic, but like, I just don't care.
No, I get that. It's always that struggle between a literary call out versus just the reading experience.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, I get what they're trying to do, but who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, it's like I'm not an English teacher. I'm not going to analyze this. Like,
Right.
just give it to me straight.
Right. I'm not writing a compare and contrast
Yeah.
essay on the very
Yeah.
book in Lit 3. So that's funny. What about you, Alex?
I got okay, so I get secondhand stress whenever I read these books.
Mhm.
Like whether it's a movie or a book that's like a thriller and it keeps you on the edge of your seat your whole time. I get like secondhand stress and it gives me like I get a lot of anxiety from it. And for me, the moment that gave me a lot of anxiety was when he injected her, like, or injected her, but like made her comatose. And it was kind of that moment, right? Like you're hitting the climax of it and everything's coming together, everything's unraveling, everything's also falling apart at the same time. And you didn't know what she was doing with that last diary entry. I was really stressed if he was going to be held accountable for what happened. I didn't want her to like end up dead. It was this whole thing. I got really stressed. I would say that was my least favorite part, but also on the flip side, a really great part too. It was very two sides to one coin.
No. No, I get that 100%. I love a good romance because I know there's practically a guaranteed happily ever after. But what's fun, but also so anxiety inducing about a thriller is you don't know if it's going to turn out well. And so the journey's fun, but oh my gosh, I can't like I don't usually get scared often, but if my boyfriend's not here, I'm locking the door, I'm flipping to, a sports romance. So I get that. My least
Yeah.
favorite part, I think, was while we got resolution with Theo in the diary. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but she's still in the coma. Like, does she ever come out? I hated that part. And it's one of those
Right.
everything shouldn't be tied into a bow. So it's probably better that it wasn't. But this poor girl went through so much, and then at the end, she's still the loser. And I was just really, I wanted more for her character, I think, but was very happy, right, with the Theo reveal. He got what was coming to him, but was just sad that there wasn't a more definitive, positive resolution for Alicia.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always a sucker for a happy ending.
I want everyone to get along. I want everyone to,
Yeah. Yeah, I love the journey, but I want it to end nicely. I want
right.
everyone to be happy.
100%. Real life scary enough, that's why I
Yeah.
read books.
Yeah.
And I'll watch the news.
Exactly. Yeah.
Too funny.
Does anybody
Oh,
have a
definitely.
favorite
I was talking.
quote?
Oh, I do. Okay. So I love in the book when Alicia says, we're all prisoners of our own minds. I think that A really hits the whole novel on its head, but I think as a whole, like in relatable to real life, like it's so accurate. You know, we're only as successful as we believe. We're only as unsuccessful as we believe. We like our mind can either be the sky's the limit or our own, golden cage, if you will. Um, so I felt like that really resonated with me is that, yeah, we are all prisoners of our own minds. There's no escaping that reality.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah.
Melina, do you have one?
What
Mm-hmm.
about you guys?
I did have one, and I have to like Google the actual wording of it. But again, I love a romance, so I always kind of drill into, I feel like the comments on love or relationships. And I think this book, while a thriller, was super interesting in exploring those relationships. So there was a quote about love, and it said we often mistake love for fireworks and for drama and dysfunction, but real love is very quiet and very boring, or something to that respect. And I just thought that was really poignant. And it's true, right? Like you get to do the fun kind of jazzy things, but when you love someone, whether romantic love, friendship love, you can kind of just exist and that can still be there. So I thought it was really interesting getting a pretty deep romantic quote from a crazy psycho thriller like this one was.
So, what did represent? Alicia's silence represent to you?
I'd say for me, I think it was a statement attributing to her own guilt, her own feelings. Like I felt like there was a lot going on within her, especially at the end when we figured out what happened and why she did what she did. And you learn her background, you learn what actually happened. I think her silence really symbolizes her snap back from her trauma in a way. When we find out when she kills Gabriel that a lot of it came from a lot of it stemmed from her father and what her father's emotional abuse towards her and how he would have rather she was dead instead of her mother. Um, and how that came into effect. And I think her silence really said a lot about the fact that she snapped with her when Gabriel told her that, choose her, kill her first, don't kill me. Um, and it was almost like she didn't have anything more to say to what was happening in her life. There was nothing more she could really say to add to it. Wouldn't change the fact of what happened. It wasn't her admitting her guilt, nor was she denying her guilt. It was she said her final piece, and her final piece was killing Gabriel and painting that last painting, and that was it.
Yeah, I thought that last piece was interesting, and you're right. I think it's so like the way people handle a big event like that is different depending on their history. So it seems like mentally, right, that's a safe space. She like reverts back to when she was a child, right, the upbringing with her parents. It's interesting. I kind of looked at it a little differently, but I can see where you kind of got to where you went. Um, I thought that no one believed her, right, when she was going to the police before all of this happened, saying she was being stalked. And so she already kind of had her voice taken at that point, right, when I look at it through that lens. And so if you've talked and tried to stand up for yourself and the bad thing still happens, I kind of felt for her in the moment being like, what's the point, right? Why say anything at all? Because whatever I say, A, to Alex's point, isn't going to change anything. But B, no one's going to believe me if not. So I kind of saw no one was believing her truth when she spoke it. So maybe writing it for her, A, was something concrete for her to latch onto and in her mind, say, okay, maybe this did happen. It's not a figment of my imagination, but maybe it's also a better medium for people to believe her.
I thought
Yeah.
that it kind of symbolized the betrayal from her husband.
Mhm.
That makes sense. I can see all points of view.
Mhm.
I think there's different aspects to it. Um, and how she processed like what happened. I mean, it's not like she stole something from Walgreens. It's kind of a very traumatic experience to begin with, and like you're kind of running through a lot of emotions. She's running through the fact that this man she loved did this. She's running through the fact that she ended up killing this man that she supposedly loved, and then all in one night it comes crashing back to her.
Mhm.
Plus, her childhood trauma is coming back. It's almost like it's so overwhelming. The noise is so
Right.
overwhelming that you just shut down and you
Right.
silence
Right.
that
Yeah.
regard.
Yeah. I can imagine how overwhelmed she probably felt, right? Everything, it was kind of a perfect storm of just crap, right? Everything coming to a head, and you kind of sit back looking at her as a character, being, how did she get here, right? Like, what decisions did she make? What wrong moves, whether through her, through someone else like Theo, who kind of took it out of her hands? Like, how did this poor woman get to this point?
Yeah. I mean, speaking of Theo, what did you guys think of him? Did your opinion of him change by the end of it, or did you think he was reliable as a narrator throughout the series, or throughout the book, or did you realize towards the end that he wasn't?
He probably wasn't a reliable narrator, but when I read it at the time, I didn't question it. Um, but I know it's part of the reading experience, but I really wanted to get inside of Alicia's head. Um, so I wish we'd gotten a little bit more of that, like her thought process when she saw him and like just I guess more comments on why she was silent. But again, I know that was kind of part of the reading experience and just how the author formatted it. So yeah, when I read this, honestly, I had just started reading again. It was like 3 years ago, and it was like Alex said, it was one of the first thrillers I had read. I think it was probably the first thriller, so I really didn't question a lot of it.
Yeah, and I think the unreliable narrator part adds to the reading experience, right? To your point, Melina. If, up until a certain point, you believe that he's pretty respectable, he is reliable. And then I don't know where that point was for you guys. I feel like maybe it was a third of the way through, a little less. I started picking up on, okay, that was weird how he kind of handled that situation, or what an odd reaction or thing to say. And I think that's when I first started picking up, being like, okay, he's something's funky with him. But early on, I don't know, when a character is too good to be true, especially in a book like this where it's a thriller and he's in the position of power as the psychologist or the therapist and she's the patient, I immediately got kind of icky. I'm like, okay, this is strange. It's an interesting story. I maybe could believe him, but I immediately get suspicious when I go into a thriller like this. And I'm like, okay, the power dynamic here is strange. And then he started acting a bit weird. I was like, I don't trust that guy. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. I think as a narrator, you go into it, and his obsession with her is very apparent from the beginning. I thought that at first, I thought it was more so just a case that really resonated with him. We've seen crime shows where that's for whatever reason, a detective, police officer, someone of that sort of authority, carries a case really deeply with him. So I knew he was somehow connected to it and to some degree because of how deeply it resonated with him and his obsession with her. Um, and then I thought it stemmed from his fascination that she was silent the whole time and that she had one painting and then that was it. So I didn't question his narration as the story went on. I think once he got to the psychiatric hospital where she was stationed, that's when things started to make me really question him as a narrator and really change my opinion of him. He kept pushing the boundaries when it came to finding out more about Alicia and really pushing her, and to go to the extent of talking to her family and her friends and all these people that a normal psychiatrist wouldn't do, right? You go to a psychologist, psychiatrist, like they're not reaching out to your family and friends. They're not, maybe your parents, right? Or someone close to you in that degree, but it's not that they're trying to get the full story from everyone around you.
Mm.
So I thought that was really interesting. And I think him as a narrator, seeing these examples really shifted for me. Like his reliability shifted for me. That by the end of it, I was like, holy cow, this guy is crazy. He should be in the psychiatric
Right.
hospital right next to her. Like, if not, the roles should be reversed.
Right.
I think he does a really good job of playing himself out, and then you see him unravel. You start to see his own personality unravel, his mindset start to unravel as he's writing this. And it starts off as something, oh, might be a professional obsession. And then you really start to see like his psychosis unravel in front of you as he's writing it. You as the reader, even from a first person point of view, are like, oh my God, this guy's crazy.
Right.
I can't, like, at what point is this normal, right? Like, you know.
No, I agree. I love psychological thrillers that are done well like this. And even though I guess the ending, I think this is why this resonates and it's often recommended, right? Because you're feeling and you're reading in real time. Okay, you start off the book thinking that he's just like you, right? This could be you, and you're just trying to help the patient or friend, right? You're that hero in your own story. And then to your point, to slowly start to see him in his mind unravel. Like, okay, am I dreaming this? Am I crazy? And you're like, oh, he's batshit. He's nuts. I think that's such an interesting part to it. And then you start to second guess and you're okay, did the last 50 pages that I just read, was that real? And then it goes back to the unreliable narrator part. like, okay, did everything I just read and he had me buy into 50 pages ago, is that actually true? And then to Melina's point, I wish we could almost see, it's probably better we don't, but it would be interesting to see how Alicia experienced it and have the two very stark differences of that obsessive compulsive mindset
Mhm.
versus this poor woman. It's nuts.
Yeah, it was definitely similar to yours, Alex. I kind of started out with, oh, this guy's respectable. He just has some interest in this case. I mean, this happens. Maybe it's something, just a personal interest. Like, oh my gosh, this is so fascinating. Like, we all have those, like, even if it's not something that you have a personal connection to, you just think, this is really fascinating. And it's just a personal interest, you know? So I thought that it was just like that, but as he goes on and he's like justifying stalking this woman and like you and Amanda said, responding to situations in a weird way, I was like, am I like is this normal or am I crazy? So it kind of had me questioning if
Right.
I was like completely unaware of, I guess, the situation and how this stuff like works.
Mm.
Um, and then going to see like Alicia's family and friends and trying to get the story, I was like, wait, so this is kind of turning into an investigation, but he's a psychologist.
Mhm.
So what is he investigating?
Right.
Right.
And like
Right.
he already
Right.
she's already convicted, so what are they trying to find out exactly?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. He takes it to a whole new level, and it almost makes you wonder. He's so obsessed with her backstory to understand why she did what she did. It makes you wonder what his backstory is to make him do what he did.
Mhm.
You know?
100%. Yeah. And has he done this before? Right? Because an obsessive person, that's immediately where my mind goes to. An obsessive person has first, and he's older, right? It's not like he's in his early 20s or what have you, and he's just coming onto his obsession. He's what, 40s maybe? That's how I kind of pictured him. So okay,
Yeah.
I've done this with more than one patient, and is he just jumping around to different psych units? Uh,
Yeah.
That's a really good point. I'm not
yeah,
sure we thought about that.
I know. That's what I thought the second book was going to be, right? The Maidens. And what I do appreciate about the author is it's kind of there's like an Easter egg, like fun, like, oh my God, that's from, but it's completely separate, and at some point I want him to circle back and maybe have a revisit to the early Theo.
Yeah. That would be nice. It kind of reminded me of the show on Netflix, Joe.
You mean?
You. Oh my God, that's what it meant. You. The guy's name was Joe.
Joe.
I was like, I figured what
Oh
you're
my
talking about,
God.
but
Sorry, guys. I
Joe,
knew it was
yeah.
like a one word, one syllable.
Acclaimed TV show, Joe. It's a
Joe.
must watch, folks.
Oh my God, if we're relating this to that,
I
guys,
mean,
I watched that and I was like, I cannot keep watching this. I'm literally watching this psychopath justify killing a person he loves
Right, but to
for
so
her
Alex's
own
how
point,
good.
that's
Like,
Theo,
what?
though.
that no, that's
Yeah,
exactly that is Theo. That like
right,
Joe is no different than Theo in his rationale.
right.
That's true.
Yeah, Theo, and how you have getting them mixed up. Theo was just in a position of power where Joe is just some Joe Schmo on the street. It's almost scarier to be in Theo's perspective because he has,
Yeah.
autonomy sort of over you,
Yeah.
Hmm.
the ability, to hurt her like you did. And Joe's just a weirdo on the street.
Yeah.
Right. True. So, as we're talking about obsession, what does this book say about obsession or the idea of saving someone?
I don't know. I think it does a really great job of kind of illustrating obsession and the easy slide into his mentality until you reach that point where you're like, oh, this guy's batshit crazy. It kind of almost scares you, or it's kind of a comment on, oh, anyone can maybe slide into obsession, right? You're just on the cusp. You were believing him. and his story and his unreliable narrative. And up until this point, this could be you. So it kind of made me think, I personally obsess over different things, right? Oh, if I want to purchase something, I might leave it in my cart for 4 days and just talk endlessly. Or a book, right? We're all doing a book pocket. We're arguably obsessed with books. I feel it just kind of shows how close everyone maybe is to that line. And it just takes a little bit, right, to kind of push you over into doing something like Theo did.
Okay. I also think that it comments on his like savior complex
Mm.
because he, in my opinion, had no right to interfere with someone else's relationship in any way, um, especially the way that he did. And he thought that he was doing the right thing by like saving her. Um, and then that ended up, like ruining her life. Um,
I agree with you. I think at the beginning of this book, you notice he's towing the line with obsession and saving her, right? You think initially he might be trying to save her. He might be one of those egotistical, I'm just gonna, I want to advance my career. I'm gonna try and save this person to really help advance my career, sort of thing. Let me be the first psychotherapist to get her to talk. That's what I thought it was. It was kind of that savior complex, but with an egotistical aspect to it. And then as you're reading it, again, he's towing that line. And and that's the thing with obsession and saving someone, there's no clear line in the sand. There's no, okay, you did this. This puts you automatically in obsession. Because in his head, the entire time, you're reading from his point of view that he's trying to save her, he's trying to help her. And again, with the idea that maybe he's doing this for his own benefit, but in the long run, he's helping her, right?
Mm.
And the more and more he rationalizes that as he's pushing that limit, right? As he's pushing her to talk, and thus she's attacking him, she's attacking other patients. He's going out of his way to go talk to her family, the same people, not once, but twice.
Mm.
That's again, you're towing that line to see how far can I go where I'm saving someone, but it's still like before it becomes an obsession, it becomes a problem. And I think reading it from his point of view again, you're learning that from the beginning, he's rationalizing obsession with the idea of saving someone. And it's not until you're probably halfway through, maybe, you have a third of the book left that you realize, okay, this man is crazy. He is obsessed. I don't know why he's obsessed, but he is obsessed. And then the last, you know, couple chapters of the book, you really find out, okay, it is egotistical. It's because of his own personal obsession, because of his own involvement in the case.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Everyone's walking that line of being a hero.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, how far does being a hero push you into kind of too much of good thing, right?
Yeah.
Until it becomes bad.
Yeah, it's like like the philosophy concept, and I don't know who this is, but it's at the end of the day, like, really being selfless? Are you still being selfish, right? Are you still being so selfless that you're selfish, right? Because you're doing it to feel good about yourself because you're helping other people, you know?
100%. It's a endless cycle. You could just iterate and iterate.
Exactly. Did you guys think that Alcestis, the painting that she did, enhance the story or feel too metaphorical?
Well, we know how Melina feels.
Well, in that case, you guys take this one because it's pretty straightforward how I feel.
I wasn't bothered by it. I could, if I could put my kind of academic hat on and think back to school, I can see the motif that it was meant to represent. Um, and so if I wanted to dive down that route, I think it's fun. It didn't bother me enough to really take away from the rest of the story. And it kind of gave a believable, I think, hook for Theo to kind of start his obsession, right? Because it was some famous painter, you right, who went on trial. And so that's maybe a natural, curious kind of entry point for a lay person who doesn't have obsessive compulsive disorder. So I think it was an interesting kind of character or kind of hook to the story, but I didn't think it really added a ton, but it also didn't detract a ton for me.
I I don't know. I could go both ways, right? She was a painter. This was the last thing she did ever, or she went fully silent. Um, for okay, this is how I think it enhanced the story, and I can go both sides of this. I think it enhanced the story in the way that now seeing the full picture, right? Understanding what the whole story was, what happened, and everything in between. For her to create that painting was her confession.
Mm.
I think that was her confession, was that painting. And that again, for me, that was like her mic drop. She was
Yeah.
like, that's it. I'm done. I don't need to speak. I don't need, if people can't freaking figure out my motive, this was my motive. Like this explains my whole motive right here. And if no one can understand that, then that's on them.
Mhm.
And I think I didn't understand how that enhanced the story until the very end. And I'm looking at it from, a bird's eye view. But in the moment, I was like, okay, like what is this? I thought it was really metaphorical. I was like, how is this coming into play? This seems like kind of a stretch. This is a little too extreme.
Mm.
But again, I can see, I understand your point of view, man. I see your point of view, Melina. But again, I think this was her final mic drop and her version of a confession.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it too, because the lore behind it, right? The mythology of what she painted, anyone who's knowledgeable or wanted to look it up, right? That's maybe a good kind of cue for maybe what happened. So I could also see it to your point as a bit of an Easter egg. Like, hey, if you know enough about this, right? It's a commentary you'll find out later. Um, and I wanted to find out more about it, right? So I'm glad we got a bit of an answer. And then if you go down a rabbit hole right after the fact, doing your own research, like, okay, this is so obvious now, you know? So I thought it was clever.
Yeah. Did you guys think that the therapy portrayal was realistic?
I've got a comment on that. Absolutely not. Uh,
Yes.
I feel like most of the population has had therapy and can agree that that is not how it works.
Yeah, well, I'm one of the few who hasn't, as a parent, anyone who's ever met me. So I can't really comment here, but it doesn't seem, from everything I've heard, it doesn't seem realistic, right? And maybe that was a first clue about the unreliable kind of narration that, hey, this seems amiss.
Yeah. And I think once he start when he first started talking to her, I was like, okay, this seems like normal, right? This is a normal patient interaction. And again, the further obsessed he became, the further involved he became in his own narrative, his own story within the story. I think you started to see that he completely went away. He threw everything aspect of therapy out the window. Maybe he justified it to his boss and all these other people. Um, and I thought it was interesting too. The guy, I can't remember his name, the psychiatrist who was giving her the medication that he had the issue with. I want to say his name was like Chris, but I could be so wrong. He was making him out to be the bad guy, the crazy guy, the guy who was like, I don't like him. But at the end of the day, Chris was the guy that was doing it by the book, making sense, doing everything right. He was the normal one. But because we were reading it from Theo's point of view,
Hmm.
we thought this other guy was wrong and his practices were kind of off and wacky. And then the further down the rabbit hole we went as we read the story, we kind of realized that roles were reversed, right? Theo was the one that was his his version of therapy by the end of it wasn't even real therapy. It was, I don't know what you would call that. What, investigation slash let me
An
fix my own
obsession.
problem. I
Yeah.
don't I don't know, right? And then Theo, or not Theo, the other guy,
Christian, right?
thank you, Christian. I knew it became with a C. Christian is, again, playing it by the book, trying to do the right thing, trying to do right by this patient in a way. And I thought that was interesting how you kind of don't like that character from the beginning, and then by the end of it, I was very much like on board for him.
Hmm. 100%.
So at what point did you guys realize that Christian wasn't the crazy one?
Um, I just like never thought, I don't think from the beginning I ever thought Christian was crazy. I just thought they had some weird beef that
Yeah.
I was like, ah, maybe he kind of comes off as that like egotistical, douchey, like I know everything more than you kind of vibe. And then as you got to like know him, you kind of, and then the way Theo made it seem was he was drugging her.
Hmm.
He was drugging her, drugging her, drugging her. And then you realize he was drugging her because she was attacking everyone whenever she didn't have the drug. And I'm not saying this is right. Please, dear God, don't, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I have no medical background in this field. But I mean, again, in Christian's head, he had the idea that this is why we medicated her. She's a criminal by law and she's attacking her patients. So, yeah, we're going to do that. And I can see his rationale behind that.
Right. Yeah, because he's representing the safety of the rest of the patients, the public, right? So at front, you're like to your point. Oh, he's a douche. He is like an you know, authoritative complex, but he's not the big villain. He's just kind of an asshole. Where you're like, all right, fuck that guy.
Yeah,
Honestly, towards the
exactly.
end, I'm not sure I even was like, yeah, I don't like him. I think I was just like, how, because you know how Theo frames it, you see him as
Yeah.
he's doing this for his own personal gain. Like, why, what does he get out of drugging her? But
Mm-hmm.
like, he's doing it on purpose to get something. And by the end, when we start questioning Theo and like the explanations that Christian gives, and I'm like, wait, that actually makes sense. So am I missing something? Or like, is there something I don't understand here? Is Theo crazy? Is Christian crazy? Like, what am I not getting here? Because this seems very reasonable.
Mm-hmm. 100%. I almost see it as like a student when you're in elementary school, how they look to the principal. They're like, oh, okay, this guy, the principal sucks. He's doing all of this. It doesn't make sense. And then when you have more information, right, or here at the end of the book, when you kind of see the other side of it,
Mhm.
looking back, it all seems very reasonable. As an adult, you can look back and say, okay, well, that sucked as a kid, right? What the principal was doing was reasonable and for the good of the public, right?
Mhm.
Probably not the cleanest, example, but that's kind of how I thought about it. Of okay, you have the full picture now. To your point, he seems reasonable in his
Yeah.
actions.
Yeah.
100%. Did you guys guess the twist in the
Yeah.
book, and did it hold up on reflection?
Yeah, so we kind of talked about this a little bit, but holding up on reflection, I honestly, I still can't put it all together and kind of like make sense of both storylines. I have trouble with storylines that aren't like parallel. Um, and I did not pick up that it was not parallel, so I would have to go back and reread like in detail, and I'm not sure that I would really understand what was happening. But reflecting back, I still, for me, it was a little too. too much to reveal that at the end and then have to think back. Um, yeah, what did you guys think?
Well, I already said I guessed the twist a little bit, or I had some idea. I think though it makes sense, and right, we're doing a whole podcast episode talking about it. So I think looking back, right, on reflection or just with the history and time away from it, it's still a good twist, right? It's why it's still popular. I just thought it was is a bit too clean a little bit at the end, but I thought it was really interesting. And to your point, I like the structure of it. I'd almost be curious if someone were to go forth and do the effort, not me, maybe ChatGPT, to reorder the chapters so we get it in chronological order and how that would kind of read. So anyone else thought that, or just my crazy brain?
It didn't really occur to me, but now that you said that, I don't know,
Yeah.
I kind of like it.
For
Yeah.
someone smarter and more tech savvy than me. What about you, Alex? Guess the twist.
No. I mean, but I don't read these like at that point I wasn't reading a lot of psychological thrillers. I don't really watch them on a regular basis, don't watch crime shows, so like I'm never the one to pick up on it. Um, and for me, like the ending, I was really like taken aback by the whole thing. It didn't make sense 100%. Like it all added up so nicely, and I felt like did the ending have its like pretty tight like bow that we all wanted, right? That resolution where we feel good because, maybe she wakes up from the coma and, she becomes exonerated. I don't know, something crazy like that.
Right.
But thrillers aren't meant for that. I felt like in its own way, it kind of came really nicely together in a bow, like a nice little Christmas gift.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I thought that, I don't know, it all made sense and it added up in my opinion. But I love talking about The Silent Patient. Like we said, it's a book that I would probably reread again if my TBR wasn't, as long as the year is. Um, and I really enjoy talking about it, really deep diving into and getting kind of insight and honestly perspective because we all kind of had different perspectives on different things. And I thought it was really interesting to hear, a hot take on different things that I honestly wouldn't have thought of myself. So this was really helpful. If you guys really enjoyed the show, if you guys had comments, concerns, thought there was a hot take that we didn't cover, definitely leave a message, DM us, comment. If there's a specific book or topic you guys want us to talk about in the future, definitely let us know. You can DM us on Instagram, TikTok, leave a comment on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, and we will definitely see that and reach back out.
So if you liked this episode, definitely like, comment, and subscribe. And thanks for being with us today.
Until next time, book besties.
Lovely as always, ladies. Have a good one.